Good evening and welcome to the Family Center Presents. This evening the topic is supporting your child's mental health, and we have with us the Lee Carlson Center for Mental Health and Wellbeing, Patty Halverson, who is the Marketing and Development Director or Manager, and then Shari Bormash. Is that correct?
Varmash, yes.
Varmash, okay. The Children's Group Facilitator for the elementary schools here in Columbia Heights School District. So we're going to have a great presentation. There will also be an opportunity for questions and answers. And in the middle of this, we will hear the tornado sirens go off for the tornado drill. So we'll be taking a brief intermission during that time, and then we'll resume. So with no further ado, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Well, before we begin here, we would like to give you a little bit of overview with our video, with our agency video, just to tell you a little bit about what we do and the programs that we have. And some of the people that you see in here are clients of ours. And we usually share it because it really gives you a good feel, not only for the variety of programs, but it shows some of the kids that, that we help in the schools in this area. And I will warn you that it says in here, maybe a little bit confusing, it says Central Center. The people refer to our agency as Central Center, and that was our old name. It used to be called Central Center for Family Resources. It's now Lee Carlson Center. So as you're viewing it, just remember that.
Just walking down the street and looking at these children, you have no idea what kind of issues are going on, what the home life is, or the behavior issues, or just things that have happened to them, like divorce or death.
And my mom died when I was 18.
I just was going through a lot. I lost my brother and sister, they were murdered.
I'd get caught in parks buying drugs. I was just going in a complete and total wrong direction, and I needed something.
I was choked, slammed to the ground, and I was threatened to be killed.
I was molested. I've been touched, and I've been talked to. I've been hit on by older men.
I've had my dad hand me his knife and tell me to kill myself.
I found out a month after my mom died that I was pregnant.
I was cutting myself. I was leaving threats to my family that I was going to kill myself, going to hang myself. You're going to find me in the closet with a rope.
I tried so hard to get one person at least in this world to love me, and nobody did. And so in middle school, I tried killing myself.
I honestly contemplated suicide a lot.
I'm Benjamin Revere.
My name's John.
My name is Henry.
My name is Bukola.
My name is Laura Wallace.
I have paranoid schizophrenia.
I have Asperger's.
Bipolar.
Had been depressed. I was suffering emotionally.
Post-traumatic stress disorder, clinical depression, and high anxiety.
Well, the first time when I first saw a hallucination, I was walking home from work. And it was just a normal day, and I was ready to join the Army, and just I had everything set up for my life. And I was going to do my laundry, and I saw a shadow. I call them shadows. I saw a shadow in my laundry room. I shut the door and sat there for 3 hours wondering what I saw.
If you're smart and you can't really talk to people, it's like you're alone, and it's hard.
I couldn't function. I couldn't talk to anybody. I didn't know what was real and what wasn't.
I lost control because I felt alone.
I had a lot of trauma in my life with, physical abuse, a lot of alcoholism in my family.
Because schizophrenia, it's basically a downhill trot. You keep going farther and farther down.
I couldn't recognize myself in the mirror anymore. They referred me for therapy. at the Central Center. If there had not been Central Center, I would have died. I was lucky to have somebody who was willing to help.
If I hadn't went to Central Center, I probably wouldn't be here. I was severely depressed. I didn't go outside. I didn't want anything to do with anyone or anything.
If Central Center didn't exist, I don't know what I would do. I don't know where I'd be, but it'd probably be a very bad place.
It's really important for schools to have student support group is because there's a lot of kids who have difficult times at home, and if they don't have any support at home, they should at least have it at school.
It made me feel more comfortable, more confident, and it made me feel like there's somebody that cares, like, finally.
I had times where I don't want to be here anymore. But because I've had somebody to come talk to and explain my feelings to, it's calmed me down, explain me what I should do with my life and given me a little hope.
It's helped me to pick better people to surround myself with.
Knowing that I have to graduate because I would be the first to graduate on both sides of my family.
I am getting registered in college to be a registered nurse.
I will be going to college.
Finally have my life on track.
After I started going to Central Center and Bridgeview, I started going out more, doing things, working, having a better relationship with my family and friends.
Well, they're really open and friendly and nice, and they're just really warm and welcoming, and I needed that.
It just feels nice to be able to talk to people. It's just really, it's just like perfect.
Bridgeview is a very warm, open place, and the staff at Bridgeview are wonderful. They're always willing to take a minute out of their day to talk to you, or if you're looking for a resource, they'll go find the resource or come up with something for you. I mean, they're very knowledgeable and very genuinely caring about the people there.
I can function better, I can remember things better, I can talk to people, and I enjoy my life more.
Before Central Center, I had no friends, and at this moment, right now, I have just a ton of friends.
Now I am confident to share my story and also use my story to encourage others to seek for help.
Bridgeview and Central Center are wonderful places, and there's very few of them out there.
If people donate to Central Center, it will help others.
My life would be different if I didn't go to Central Center.
I've gotten a lot of help, and I really hope that more people can help this fundraiser because this has helped me tremendously.
Just think that every penny that you find on the ground, or every penny that you have in your pocket, or every penny that you make, just imagine that penny being a student that you can help. Imagine that penny making someone's day. Imagine that penny making that smile that student never had before. Imagine that what that penny can do.
If we weren't here, I fear our kids would be lost.
Well, you noticed that talked a little bit about fundraising, and the reason that video was played is we used it at a fundraiser that we just had, and we are a nonprofit organization. But I think it gives you a good overview of the programs that we have. Just a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. We want to give you a little bit of overview about Lee Carlson Center. You saw a little bit in the video, but just a little bit about the programs that we have, kind of put a framework before we get into the specifics about our school program here. Sherry's going to talk a little bit about what mental illness looks like in younger kids, in teens. some of the things I think a lot of parents wonder about: when do you need to be worried? What's a normal stage of your child's life, and when do you need to be worried? What are some of the warning signs? There also seem to be some trends that I know Sherry's going to address, that she's seeing with the kids that she's working with, and we want to talk a little bit about that. And then mental health issues really have an impact on school and performance at school, and we want to tell you what some of the specifics are there. But the biggest thing that we want to leave you with is for anybody who has a child or anybody in your family or your friends who are dealing with a mental illness, there is hope, and there is a way to work through those problems. We'd also want to talk a little bit about resources for teachers, for parents, counselors, and then we do have some time for Q&A at the end to answer your questions. The woman that you see in this picture wearing the hat is Lee Carlson, and she passed away about 6 years ago, and we named our agency after her 2 years ago on our 30th anniversary. And the reason that we wanted to rename the agency after Lee Carlson is she was just this wonderful, charismatic woman who started this agency with just a grassroots effort. She lived in Spring Lake Park. She had kids in the Spring Lake Park School District. She was really concerned with her kids and the kids that her kids hung around with. There just weren't any programs to help kids who were having problems, emotional or behavioral problems. So she started groups in the schools for at-risk kids, and that was how Central Center at the time started. And those programs continue today. In fact, Sherry runs one of those programs here in Columbia Heights, and where there were just a couple programs 30 years ago, we now see over 1,600 kids among all of our school groups. And so the program has really expanded, as have the services that we provide. One of the big things that we really focus on is prevention and early diagnosis and treatment for kids, because it's so important. And Sherry works with real young kids. She's going to talk about that. Is if you can really catch some of the issues, emotional issues, behavioral issues when kids are young, you really avoid a lot of problems through the teen years and when they become adults, when those problems can really be exacerbated. The mission at Lee Carlson Center: we are a clinic, and so we do take insurance, but we're also a nonprofit. We're a charity. And a couple years ago, when we changed our name, we decided we also wanted to define what our mission was, and that is to provide exceptional and affordable mental health services for families, for children, for youth, and adults in the community. Every year we see about 4,500 clients, and that's between our clinic services and the schools that we serve. We provide services in Anoka County and the northern suburbs. So we do see kids in North Hennepin. We see some from Ramsey, other counties as well. Our niche has always kind of been never turn anybody away for their inability to pay. So we see about 60% of our clients are uninsured or underinsured. We offer a sliding fee scale, and we also offer take medical assistance. Although we see all ages, really when you break down the numbers, our core is about 10 to 17, and a lot of that has to do with the work that we do in the schools and the number of kids that we see. And we see people who maybe have temporary depression or situational type of depression, but we also, through Bridgeview, the program, our drop-in center, we serve a lot of adults who have long-term depression issues, anxiety issues, bipolar, schizophrenia, people who really are unable to work and to function in a day-to-day life, and we see those people as well. We talked about the school program. We're right now in about 20 schools, K through 12, and we're in 4 different school districts. And as I mentioned, in those programs, in the schools, we have various levels of services that we provide, but there are about 1,600 kids per year that we see. And Sherry's going to talk a little bit more about this, but when we do see kids in the school program, we're dealing with a lot of different things. A lot of anger management, self-esteem issues, teaching kids how to resolve conflict with their peers, with family members. Chemical dependency is tied into all of this. There really seems to be a connection between mental health and chemical dependency issues. Learning just how to control yourself in the classroom environment. We also offer parenting classes, and I've got some information over on the table over there, and we're just actually starting them up in May. It's our next series of classes, and really just to try to teach parents how to better communicate with their kids, how to inspire the kids to be more responsible, more resilient. We have a licensed therapist that conducts these parenting classes. They run for 6 weeks, and they're actually in the Blaine Human Services building. So if you're interested in that, I do have information, and it's also on our website as well. In the Fridley Clinic, we offer a number of different services, and that's our main clinic. We do have child psychiatrists. We have one child psychiatrist right now, but we're adding a second one. And if you have ever tried to find those services, you know that they're hard to find. There is a long waiting list. There are only a limited number of child psychiatrists in the state of Minnesota. And the difference between the therapist and the psychiatrist is a medical doctor, and they prescribe medication. We also do testing, and Sherry's going to talk a little bit more about that, but psychological testing to help try to define a diagnosis, to figure out what a child might be struggling with. And that is kind of a long process. It involves some one-on-one work with someone who does the psychological testing. It's also some actual tests that kids take, personality tests, and there's an evaluation done, and that really helps the therapist, it helps the psychiatrist figure out the best form of treatment. We do play therapy for kids that are younger than 5 who have a hard time communicating, but through playing with toys and games, able to make a connection with those kids. A lot of those kids are through our domestic abuse program and kids who have had trauma in their lives. We do group therapy, individual therapy, and we do also see a lot of families and couples. And we have different therapists who specialize in all of those things. We have a domestic abuse program as well, and that is through our Blaine Human Services building. And ours is a little bit different. It's very family focused. So men that go through our men's domestic abuse program are usually required through the court system to go through a program, through a 12-week program. And we have a psychologist who works with them. He's a PhD and many years of training. And then we have a woman who deals with the women who have been victims of domestic abuse. And then we also have a parenting program. Once the men and women have been through the program, they can go through what we call a restorative parenting, learning how to reparent to the kids who've been affected by domestic abuse. And then there's a sexual assault program that's part of that as well, and that is for women 18 plus who either have been victims of child sexual abuse as children or through rape or something as an adult. And there is a one-on-one program and then a group program that they can go through. And then you saw in the video a little bit about Bridgeview. Bridgeview is a really wonderful program, and that is a drop-in center. It's a free program. And in order to be what we call a Bridgeview member, you need to have a diagnosis of what we call serious and persistent mental illness. And that is something that either a medical doctor or a psychiatrist a diagnosis that they have been given. And it could be anything from chronic depression to schizophrenia to bipolar disorder. Once you have that diagnosis, you can come through and do an intake and go and be what we consider then a Bridgeview member. And again, it's a free program. They do all kinds of support groups and field trips. There's free transportation to and from the center. It's not an overnight, but it's a drop-in center. And if you live in Anoka County, there is free transportation both ways. They also have a great art program, and they sell their art. If you're ever interested in any really nice custom art, they sell their, you can see it on our website, you can see some of the artwork, but they show it throughout the Twin Cities. And in fact, tonight there's a big one, I think at Sister Kenny, where a lot of the artists are showing their work. We also have started a writer's workshop. There's a real connection between mental illness and creativity, and a lot of the members there are extremely creative. And so we bring guest writers in. There's a lot of authors, believe it or not, in Minneapolis who are New York Times best-selling authors, and we bring them in, and they will do a class like memoir writing or something, and then the people can take advantage of that. So it's just a really wonderful program. So with that, that's a little bit of background on the many programs that we do, but I know that most of you here are really interested in kids and the programs that we do in the schools. And so if you're interested in anything more, I do have handouts. That's our website. That's our phone number to get more information. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sherry Barmash.
Welcome. I have been with the center for 22 years now. Passionate about these kids, and it always makes me tear up a little bit just watching the video, because I'm one of the people that to these kids does make a difference. It's something that they look forward to so much, having the stability, the connection, a familiar face, knowing that from year to year, grade to grade, we will go with them throughout the programs in the schools. And like Patty had mentioned, starting young, we see kindergartners. The kindergartners will usually put sometimes boys and girls together, first grade, second grade, all the way up. We're in the middle school and the high school, and just teaching the self-control, letting kids know, more importantly than anything, that there is always a choice. You know, I think some kids just react, they don't think first, and they just act out, and they don't realize that you have a choice. So what we do is we slow them down and we get them to think. You have a choice. What are some of your choices? What's the right choice, the best choice? Teach them some techniques and coping skills. The mental health problems, so common. 1 in 5 adults, 1 in 4 children. In the children I see, it's even more than 1 in 4. Depression is most common. And half of all mental illnesses will begin by age 14, 3/4 by age 24. When it's untreated mental illness, what you'll see is school failure. You'll see that more and more kids are having kids of their own and childbearing in teenage years. They have unstable employment. Some of that we even see coming down from the families. It's extremes right now where we will see either the parents working so many jobs and just barely able to spend any time with the kids because they're always at work day, night, weekends, or there's the unemployment, which is, you know, the other extreme of concern right now, and losing houses. Early marriages, the marital instability, and the violence, both domestic and with the children. More severe mental health issues, 6% of the entire population. Serious, meaning that it limits your daily activities, can be a work disability. And the suicide attempts. At young ages, we see, you know, cutting and the intent to hurt themselves, or a psychosis. The children are so young, the anxiety in the children, the stress level in the children. How, you know, would you know if your child's problems are serious? It can show up in the multiple settings. Sometimes things just present themselves at school. Other times it's home. Other times it's friendships. We need to take a tornado drill break.
So welcome back, and we will resume our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We were just talking about how you would know if your child's problems are serious. Some of the things that you would watch for also are changes in appetite, sleep, even moods is a big indicator. Social withdrawal, fearful behavior towards things that they normally don't show fear towards. Some returning to younger behaviors, indicate a seriousness when there's bedwetting, when that wasn't an issue. Signs of just being upset, sad, tearfulness.
Start over, I'll hit play. I didn't hear anything, I was just waiting for...
Oh!
Oh, I couldn't hear that. Oh, okay. See, I had it turned up when you were talking on that, because that mic is always quieter than those mics. Those mics pick up a lot better. So I had it turned up again. Okay. Or I had it turned down for when they were talking. Okay.
So you'll just say welcome back.
Welcome back. We were talking about how to know if your child's problems are serious in multiple settings, school, home, with peers. You would look for a change in appetite, with sleep, moods, social withdrawal. All of a sudden they're not wanting to be out and with their friends. Fearful behavior towards things that they normally don't show fear towards. With the seriousness, they'll often return to young behaviors, bedwetting, show signs of being upset or sad or tearful. There's self-destructive behavior, getting hurt often, wanting to hurt themselves, head banging to calm themselves, repeated thoughts of death, both to themselves and expressing it to others. Can symptoms be caused by an event? Absolutely, a tragedy in life, a death, a divorce, an illness. We're seeing a lot of foreclosures. All of the stress can cause emotional upset. And if it takes more than a month, or if they're having severe reactions, that's when it's time to absolutely, you know, get a checkup, talk to a doctor or psychiatrist, get some help. The doctor or psychiatrist would rule out other causes to diagnose a mental illness in young children. They would do a medical and mental health history of your child and your child's family, your parents, your grandparents. They would discuss if there's been any recent traumas in your life. And they would also ask for you to get some paperwork and fill out just some questionnaires from parents, from teachers, from caretakers, people that are in your kids' lives, often just simple inventory checklists to let them know what's going on. And then there'll be more testing to follow. With teens, they are, the main difference between teenage and adult depression is it's more of an irritable or angry mood rather than a sadness. They will have unexplained aches and pains and headaches and stomach aches. The pain's so severe, we've spoken with pediatricians that have said that the kids will come in, they feel that it's as if they're having appendicitis or something so physical going on, and then they just find out that it's mean girls syndrome or boys bullying boys, things like that. There's an extreme sensitivity for criticism, a feeling of worthlessness. It's really a problem for overachievers. Even, in the kids that are gifted and talented, they're not exempt from the problems that are out there today. Those are kids that are, using medications and trying to up their performance scores with the level of stress. The difference between teenage and adult depression also is withdrawing from some, but not all people, but there is usually some withdrawal. And while an adult would tend to isolate themselves when depressed, a teen would usually keep some of their friendships, share some of that with their friendships. They may socialize less than before. They might start to pull away from their parents. All of a sudden they have less to talk about, less to share. If they start hanging out with a different crowd. When it's untreated depression, it can lead to really large problems at school, both behavior, academic. It can lead to running away. Often substance abuse, which we're seeing quite a bit of, low self-esteem, just feeling that there just isn't any better, they don't deserve any better, they don't foresee any better for themselves, and eating disorders. It can lead to an internet addiction. We're seeing quite a bit of that with just the social networking sometimes. Self-injury, we're seeing some cutting and self-mutilation, reckless behavior, violence and suicide are all part. One of the concerns I just mentioned with the youth is the self-harm, the cutting and the suicide. Some of the social concerns are the bullying. We are seeing very extreme family financial crisis right now with the economy, the stress being too much and separating families, kids having to raise themselves and kids having to do a lot more and have a lot more responsibilities than just being kids today. The current youth trends, that every year there's an estimated 5 million youth that are suffering with depression. Females are much more likely, twice as likely than males. It's the second leading cause of death in Minnesota is suicide. And 25% of public schools with ninth graders in Minnesota, when polled, will say that they've considered suicide or they have hurt themselves on purpose. 1 in 65,000 youth and 10 to 14 will commit suicide each year. And substance abuse is such a risk factor with the suicide, just not able to have clear thinking and make the right decisions. And with the mental health issues, how it can affect school performance is restlessness, just an inability to focus in class, very short attention span, very easily distracted, a hard time remembering verbal directions and just needing to take breaks often. A lack of stamina, not having enough energy to get through the day, drowsy, where a student will fall asleep in class, or a lack of sleep from staying up too late at night, unsupervised, playing video games late at night is often a case, or not, and the medication side effects sometimes as well, sleepiness or sleeplessness. They'll have difficulty handling their time pressures, multiple tasks, managing assignments. Kids that are responsible will be really good about planners and writing things down and knowing what's due. When life is stressful at home or at school, it's hard for kids to remember homework assignments, to turn in their notebooks, to get their big projects done, or if there isn't anybody at home to help them complete some of these projects. So meeting deadlines is very difficult for some kids, and just setting priorities, what they should do first. It overwhelms them to know that there's things, in more than one subject, and they're not sure how they should organize that. They have a difficulty interacting with others, a really hard time talking to other students. Being in group helps quite a bit with that. We do so much role playing, and we actually initiate conversations with welcoming new students, with how you would approach somebody that you'd like to be friends with. It's difficult sometimes to participate in class. There's kids that are too nervous or shy or anxious to raise their hands and ask questions in class. And again, meeting new people, just making friends. To handle some negative feedback or change is hard. It's very difficult. Kids that are having a hard time at home, any criticism at all, any correction is hard to understand. They take it so personally. When there's a change in the classwork, it will cause stress. The unknown is very difficult for many kids, especially kids with a learning disorder. It interferes with the mastery and skills of math and reading. There's auditory and visual perceptuals that can be tested. The schools can test for that. The clinics can test for that. Coexisting condition would be 50 to 60% of all kids with ADHD, and many aren't known. They haven't realized that there's a learning disability. They just think something's wrong with the child. They're just angry at the child when really there's an underlying learning disability. Disruptive behavior disorders, up to 35% of the youth with ADHD include oppositional defiant disorder, which is an ongoing pattern of uncooperative, defiant, hostile behaviors toward authority figures that interfere with day-to-day functioning for kids. A conduct disorder where kids will act inappropriately, they'll infringe on the rights of others, and they'll violate the behavior expectations of others. Mood disorders in up to 15 to 20% with ADHD will be depression, bipolar disorder, irritable, moody, easily frustrated, emotionally immature, very unstable. There just isn't any stability with their moods. They roller coaster up and down. There's a much greater risk for drug abuse and substance and suicide. Therapy is such a valuable option. Psychiatry with medication helps so many of the disorders. Up to 25% with the ADHD, anxiety orders. The symptoms are more internal. They're harder to recognize. There's the fear, the nervousness, the worry, feelings of panic, severe and ongoing and frequent, where it's happening 3 to 5 times a week. Kids are having it, asking often to go to the bathroom and get out of class, and teachers aren't knowing, what it is that's going on. And it turns out there's an underlying anxiety disorder being in the classroom. Again, therapy and psychiatry help and medication, so helpful. And there's hope, so much hope. We see it every day. We see it ongoing all year. Just from knowing that there's a problem, getting the help, just as you would, take your car in for a tune-up, just taking your kids in and getting assessed, finding the underlying cause of the issue, and to first understand them. We, at the clinic and also through the schools, they do the psychological evaluations, just sometimes called the testing, just the basic tests of assessing and using an instrument as part of the evaluation. It's not quick and it's not easy as far as answers, but within time, we see big results. Interviewing and doing additional records. The diagnosis is so critical. Just knowing what's wrong helps determine the best treatment. And for assisting the doctor with medication and helping the schools determine the best plan of action. The school district does such a wonderful job of helping the kids and figuring out the plans of actions once they know what's wrong with what the diagnoses are and how best to help. How the testing works would be there would be a clinical interview with the teen and the guardian. Teen interviews alone to determine testing to be used, confidential settings. They administer the tests. Some are interactive, some are checklists, some are self-reports. Usually on the self-reports, even the child can be involved and evaluate some of their own behaviors. Behavior checklists will be given to parents, guardians, teachers. I give the kids checklists as well, so I even have the students do checklists as where they're at and how they're feeling, rate themselves as how their day is going. And with their anger scales, we'll do a 1 to 5 and see where they're feeling with their anger. review records, both school, hospital, legal, and the information is scored and analyzed, compiled into a psychological evaluation. It will give the report, the final report will give background testing results, interpret and summary, psychological impressions, a diagnosis and recommendation. The information is shared with other professionals only if the release forms are signed, only if the parent and the teen agree to that. Otherwise, everything is kept confidential. With a better understanding, then the healing can begin. Support for the families. Most of the therapists will work with the family as well, not just the child, but with the family, how best to handle the behaviors and the children. For some problems, the family therapy is preferred, just as a whole unit, how to deal with the problems, relational conflicts, eating disorders. Healing through the individual therapy, a chance for them just to talk, a chance for them to have a caring, trained professional to seek advice, answer questions. Most youth on an average would see a therapist for 12 to 15 sessions. Sometimes it's, just short, getting to the root of just a temporary problem. Sometimes it needs to be ongoing for a year or more if the problems aren't going away. Choosing a therapist, more than any other professional service, it's just important that the family and teen are comfortable. There has to be a click. There has to be a unison. Sometimes it takes a few until they find the perfect fit. And trust is the most critical component to achieving mental wellness. And I think that's such an important component of the groups that we run in the schools, is that the kids know this is a safe place. Anything that you say and do here is kept here. It's not going to be talked about at recess. There's ramifications. The student wouldn't be able to participate in group if they took that information that's shared in group outside of group, and they so badly want to participate that trust isn't broken. It's really highly valued. And questions to ask the therapist. Do you have experience with this particular problem, the problems that you're facing with your child and with your family? Do they like working with youth? What % of the practice is youth and family based? How long have they been practicing? How many sessions do they expect the therapy to last? How frequently will it be scheduled? And even, reevaluation, reassessment. Usually after so many treatment sessions, they'll say, this is what we've accomplished, this is where we're at, this is what we still need to do. A constant checklist. And how they'll measure progress. Reluctance. Families have reluctance about therapy. I wish that they would all see that it's so important and it's so healthy. It's as healthy as taking vitamins. It's just taking care of yourself. Parents to try to explain their concerns, why they want to see a therapist, what's changed, what's different. If the teen is reluctant, then just making a deal with them. Say, you know what, this is something I really want you to try 2 to 3 times. Make it explicit to the therapist that they're all in agreement. They're reluctant. This isn't something that they want to do, but they're willing to give it a shot 2 to 3 times. And honesty is just the best way to start therapy, not holding back from the therapy sessions, but letting them know just the true scenario and not springing on your child or coerce your child or bribe your child into attending, but be upfront with them and comfortable with the therapy yourself so that they don't see your hesitation and reluctance to it. And supporting your child or teen, just to share ongoing concerns with them, to stay actively involved in their therapy. Focus on being a parent. It's so important. Life gets so busy, and sometimes just even 5 minutes just to check in. How was your day? How are your friends? What's going on? Knowing when your child has tests, knowing what's due. Showing affection and also setting limits. The kids need so much structure and have so little of that right now. Setting limits with the games. Yes, you can play your video games after you've done your homework or take a short break of video games and then, let's get some homework done. Prioritizing, so important. And knowing their friends, so important to ask, who did you sit with? Who are some of your friends? Tell me about them. Knowing who their friends are is a really good barometer to not only how they're doing, but the kind of decisions that they're making, the people that they're hanging out with. And to help the youth to know the difference between normative development and a warning sign that might require some psychological help. Watching for symptoms of worry, of sadness, of anger that are excessive, just come out of nowhere, frequency, the duration, just to think about, is there an outside stressor right now when we do our intakes and work with the children? You know, those are some of the questions that we ask. Has anything changed recently in your lives? Anything new going on? Helping youth, just threats to safety, threats to harm others, even jokingly. We don't take any of it as a joke. We attend to all of it immediately, even if it's, even if we think the child is joking, we address it immediately in the groups with the families. Community involvement, just that we can all help these youth that are struggling so badly just by spending time developing mentoring relationships, being a role model, decreasing the stigma around mental health is so important. Like I said, if they see that you have a positive attitude toward it, you're excited about getting some help, you're excited about the resources available, and just noticing and really praising the positive changes. Even when everything is wrong with some of the kids that we see, we find the compliments and praise. We just give so much praise within the group. How to get help at school, usually to share concerns with the principal, the school counselors, the special ed department teachers. If the special education services are needed and approved, that your child is eligible under the IDEA, under the Disabilities Education Act, and the school district will and must develop an individualized education program specifically for your child within 30 days. And the resources. So many community resources. Our agency, the Lee Carlson Center, we have a website and our phone number. The people incorporated with the Twin Cities Crisis Services, the SAVE organization, the local hospitals, the therapy clinics, family doctors, friends, clergy. In the resource for testing, the schools can perform a portion of the testing, focus on the academic piece. The schools won't give a diagnosis. The medical professional is needed for that. Finding a therapist, really word of mouth, asking friends and family who they've seen, calling your insurance company, local, and network referrals, and asking the school counselors. Have really good lists of resources. Also your clergy person. Resources for testing and therapy. Again, at the Lee Carlson Clinic, that center, we do the testing on site. Youth is, after all, just a moment, but it's the moment and the spark that you'll carry in your heart forever. And we have time for some questions if anybody has any question.
Your child is so young now, huh? Are you preparing? Anticipating some of the things that you could be dealing with?
I guess I'm wondering, sometimes hard to tell if a child is just moody or if they really have something that should be taken seriously. Can you give some examples about how to tell the difference between just an off day or an off week, or when, is it the persistence?
It's the persistent, it's the length of time. You know, girls can be very hormonal and very moody, and it goes up and down, and something can happen during the day that can affect them. But if it's continual, if you notice that they're just not smiling anymore, the spark is gone, things that they used to really enjoy and look forward to doing, that you're having a difficult time getting them to go and do these activities and want to do these things, if you're seeing them start to disconnect and lose interest in things that they used to so enjoy, that's time to reevaluate and say, you know, I wonder what's going on. And in the shift, I think in the youth and the trends are just continually changing. When I started 22 years ago, it was so much about, this is just a friendship group, and this is just, we're going to learn about feeling good about yourselves, we're going to do identification and communication of feelings, we're going to do some anger management. And now there's so, you know, and we didn't really do as much stress reduction and anxiety, and we weren't seeing, you know, all the performance anxieties with the schools. Now we're doing the safety plans, which, you know, 22 years ago weren't in place in every group. And we're shifting to how to handle the bullying and the peer pressures. And the substance abuse is coming back into play much more heavily from the stressors in the environment.
Does any of the children does anyone come to the groups, or do you guys call them in? Your needs?
The groups are open to anyone based on availability with space. The referral process oftentimes will come from the school staff, but parents, absolutely, we've had parents that have said, my older children were in group years ago, can my youngest start? And absolutely, absolutely. We service all the grades. And I personally, we gear the groups towards the group of kids. So if we have a group of kids and the entire group of kids has, recently divorced parents, that will be a heavy focus. If, we try to gear them towards the issues with emotions. If we have a group of boys and anger is a really common factor, we will spend quite a bit of time on anger management and self-control, and getting kids to see how they do have a choice. And we have, we use self-calming, techniques that we teach the kids, and kids will come back and they'll say that, I wanted to hit somebody, or I wanted to say something really bad, but I stopped myself. You were in my head. They'll say, I thought about this turtle and self-calming techniques, and I stopped myself, and I made a better choice. And
You didn't contact schools then, or how was
yes, you can, usually the best contact is just to go directly to the school as far as for the school groups. As far as the testing and the therapy and the psychiatrist, all of that can be done by directly contacting the clinic. But for the school groups, usually the school is the best route. And we also start kids at any time of the year. We run our sessions, 2 12-week sessions during the school year, but we have kids that move into the district, and it's a great place for them to find some connections and find some friends, and we'll start them in the middle of the year.
I would imagine a lot of children are affected if their parents are struggling with their mental health.
Yes.
And of course, if the parents are addressing their mental health issues, it benefits their children. Can you talk a little bit, if parents are starting to think, maybe I have some mental health things that I might want to look at, how they might be able to get some support, because then it'll also support their children.
Absolutely. The parents should get some help, calling the clinic, contacting the schools, getting information, the crisis helplines, talking to clergy, the community. If you can get yourself healthier, you can be a healthier person for your kids. And we'll have kids say that, I think my parent is depressed, they sleep a lot, or, my parent's crying a lot, or my parent worries a lot. And, we'll check in with the parents. You need to get yourself some help as well. So important to check in and as a family unit to stay strong.
Sorry to keep asking questions, but I'm wondering about some of the cultural differences. This is a very multicultural, not only district, but region. And can you say anything about how is some of this perceived by Latinos or Somalis or Tibetans or some of the other cultural groups, so that we can also be culturally sensitive as we are looking at this?
Yeah, I know there are, and Sherry, I don't know if you deal with that, but I think especially in the Somalian culture, I know there are issues with using the word mental. It's just not perceived. There's a stigma with that. I guess there is for all of us, but in particular in that culture. I think some cultures have more of a reluctance to get help, too, to get therapy. It's frowned upon in their culture. So there certainly are those issues and I don't know if you deal with that.
And even
Some of the kids.
socially, there's some issues with that they're not allowed, and always doing the same things that other kids are doing on weekends and freedom and have more time. But I think that I use the word support more often than I use the word therapy, and I use it as a support system, that it's okay to need some help. It's okay to use the resources. We're out there. The people are there to help and support you. The parenting classes are wonderful support for that, just in how to talk so that your kids will listen and listen so that your kids will talk to you and let you in and what's going on in their lives. Not to dismiss your kids and their concerns and their worries, and just to listen to the stressors.
And there definitely is a stigma to mental, I mean, it's gotten better over the years, but there's still, among the general population, there certainly is that stigma. And if kids only really knew how many other kids have issues and challenges that they're dealing with and stress, it's so common.
That's one of the things that kids are most surprised by in group, is that they feel this is only happening to them. And then they hear these other kids and they're just like, wow, I can't believe it. I thought I was the only one that felt this way. I thought I was the only one that was experiencing this or going through this. So it gives them those connections that you're not alone. You know, other people are feeling the exact same thing and going through the same thing.
That's what's really nice about the support at the school and the work that Sherry does too, is a lot of families don't really know how to navigate the mental health system. And it's hard for parents who work to get their kids to clinics, but to have that service free available at the school is just perfect for these families and for these kids who may not get any help, may not have anybody to talk to if it weren't for having it at the school.
The majority of my clients would never be seen anywhere else, just due to conflicts in scheduling and time and resources. So to get at them through the day and give them that support.
And a lot of the issues, would you say, happen at school too? A lot of things happen, drama, stress, things happen, and it's good to have somebody right away who you can talk to about it.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd really like to thank both of you for this presentation. I think that this was really helpful. And I think you've given us some good resources, and there are a lot of brochures also that all of the schools have these brochures on hand as well. And I think a really important message is that families are not alone. And children are not alone, parents are not alone. And I know that these are stressful times for many people. But there are services out there, and the schools are here to support students and their families throughout early childhood all the way through high school. And as a community ed director, I'd like to say all the way through life. There are services, supports, and resources that the school district can be there for community members. Thank you very much for your presentation.
The school district does a wonderful job.
Thank you. And have a good evening.